Carlos Nelson with What's Up Kansas City. Today we have a special guest, Emiel Cleaver. He's here to give our community a little bit of information about his upcoming documentary about one of the major figures in the last 50 years in Kansas City's history, Leon Jordan. How are you doing, Emiel?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
All right. Let's cut through the chase.
Okay.
Let's talk about, first of all, what inspired you to do this documentary on Mr. Jordan?
Well, I mean, I did a documentary on Freedom Incorporated back in 2012. And when I did that documentary, I learned, Leon Jordan was pretty much the leader of Freedom Incorporated when it started. So he was the most interesting person. So I knew back then that I eventually wanted to do a documentary on him. And through the years, things happened. But I got a rocket grant last year from the Charlotte Street Foundation and the Spencer Museum of Art. And when I got that grant, that was the spark to start the documentary. I mean, from there, I was off and running.
Tell me this, how hard was it for you to gather information about Leon? I came here in 1978 from New York, just when a lot of things were really turning over. When did he pass?
In 1970, July 15, 1970.
All right. Because what I knew about him when I first came here was the Green Duck. Mm-hmm. And he was always associated with the Green Duck and the continent. Where was he? Where did he wind up migrating to?
Well, he was born in Kansas City, but he eventually went to Liberia.
Yeah, it was Liberia. Yeah. All right. And that really tied Kansas City to his part of his legacy. So run it down. What was the name of the documentary you did on freedom again?
The documentary was Freedom Is Now. And then a few years after that, the Bruce R. Watkins Cultural Heritage Center hired me to do a short 10-minute documentary on Bruce Watkins.
All right.
So I mean, and then now Leon Jordan.
Right. Those were iconic figures in Freedom Inc. So where did you pull most of your information on Jordan?
Well, there was a book, Dr. Robert Farnsworth. He wrote a biography on Leon Jordan. He actually knew Leon Jordan, but he also wrote a biography. He was a longtime professor at UMKC. So he wrote a book on him, and that was one of the first places I started. But I got to interview Glenn Rice, who was one of the Star reporters, Kansas City Star reporters.
I remember his name.
That broke broke that story back in 2011 or something like that.
I know Alvin Sykes was trying to get down to the bottom of his murder.
He did. I mean, he was the one who got the police to reopen the case. I guess the prosecutor to reopen the case, and the Star they were doing an investigation around the same time, so it kind of coincided. But Alvin Sykes did get the case reopened, and they believe they know who the killers are, but they didn't think that they could get conviction at almost 50 years later. It was 45 at that time, so. But they believe they've named who they believe the killers are.
Did you name those names in your documentary?
Yeah, I mean they're named. I wasn't the first to name them, so it was not like a surprise or anything. But yeah, I did name the names that the Jackson County prosecutor named.
All right, tell me this: how important do you think it was for you to illuminate who Jordan is, especially in the climate of historical context of us honoring and giving more information about the people that come out of our community in our own voice, our own narrative? How important was that to you?
Well, it was important because I mean, you hear about people now tearing down these old monuments, these old Confederate monuments, of people who were racist and slave owners. Well, I mean, there's a monument here in Kansas City on 31st and Benton that a lot of people don't even know about. A lot of people driving by. I know some of the people that worked on the documentary with me. They said they had seen that statue a bunch of times, but never knew who it was. So, I mean, that was one of the driving forces because nobody knew who he was. And as you know, he was an important figure in Kansas City, not only in Kansas City but the state.
And law enforcement, and he wore so many hats, and he was a hell of a businessman.
Yeah, I mean, he was a real good businessman. He actually helped out other minority businesses, loaned them money to help them get started. He helped people get jobs. He was a police detective.
And that was rough back in those days.
Yeah, it was real rough because the stories that I get was told that a black officer couldn't arrest a white person. You'd have to call a white officer to come make the arrest. So I mean, that was one of the reasons why he wanted to go to Liberia to start the police force in Liberia. So he did all the training and all of that over in Liberia. So you ever go to Liberia and visit and see the police force? I mean, somebody from Kansas City had their hand in that.
Do you think that that should be taught? Some of the stuff should be taught in public schools.
Yeah, because I think during Black History Month, I mean, the only month that they really talk about black leaders, black important historical figures, they talk about Martin Luther King, Frederick Douglass, the same old. But there's hundreds of them, especially here in Kansas City. I mean, so I think it needs to be taught in Kansas City, definitely.
How do you feel with the Floyd situation and a new awareness of Black Lives Matter, the not just awareness in America, across the globe? How do you feel his story fits in that context?
Well, I mean, I guess in that context, he was starting a new political organization. I mean, he was doing that because he wanted change. He felt like that his community, black community, wasn't being represented. So he wanted to do something different. So he started a political organization, which is kind of similar to what's going on now. People wanted change, and they're starting an organization. A lot of younger people are running for elected office, and so I mean, it fits in. I mean, it's just a different decade.
What did he use the Green Duck for?
That was his club.
Yeah,
that was a club. That was a club, but he also had an office there where he would conduct business. People from all over the state.
But did Freedom, some of the beginning conversations and things start off in the Green Duck?
Yeah. I mean, they had the office. I don't know if it was the first office, but I believe it was either the first or the second office was in part of the Green Duck. I mean, there's a picture in the documentary where you can see the Green Duck and then the Freedom headquarters sign next to it. So, yeah, I mean, I think a lot.
Did your dad know him?
Yeah, but he was young.
Right.
Yeah, I think he met him. They had conversations. So he didn't know him. I don't think. Really,
And that mentioned in that statue, and it's the same thing with Bernard Powell.
Mm-hmm.
He's got that right off of Brooklyn statue right in front of the park.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know who these people are.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I want to do documentaries on them. I'm trying to get it into the school systems because, like you said, it needs to be taught in school. I mean, because they don't
It's
know.
part of history. It's like,
history.
And that's the awakening that the majority community has basically whitewashed history, especially the contributions that African Americans have made in this city and around the world. And if people like yourself are not picking up the torch to try to look into and give a wider perspective of who these people are, who these ministers were, who this leadership was. And how long did it take you to do the documentary? We talked off camera and you said you had to leave a lot out of footage and things that you did. How long did this project?
Well, the documentary is 28 minutes and 30 seconds exactly. And I had to cut a lot of his life out to make it fit in that time frame. But it took me probably about 10 months, I guess.
10 months?
Yeah.
Were you able to bring some people that actually knew him into the picture?
I brought Richard Tolbert, who knew him, Mamie Hughes, knew him, Alvin Brooks.
All right.
Knew him. So, and then Lee Bohannon, he wasn't, I mean, he met him, but he was actually running against Leon Jordan at the time of his assassination. So
that's when Sac 20 really was
they were
feeling their muscles.
They were right down the street from the Green Duck. Not even right down the street, just one block.
Right. I remember when I came here, Sac 20 was still there, and when I bought the drugstore that was on the corner of 27th and Prospect, by that time Sac 20 had disbanded, but all of their stuff was in the storerooms there, and I turned it all over to Horace, because Horace Peterson and myself used to run around together, and I gave him all of that and really got to know the history of social action men of 20, and was really intrigued about Leon, about Bruce, and about that time about your dad, Hasley, and Leon was more mentorship to those guys who came into their own prominence from some of the moves that he made. It was surprising to me it took so long for them to reopen that case.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there were a lot of different theories about who killed him and why. But yeah, I guess the son of one of the people responsible talked to Alvin Sykes, I believe, and got him to talk to the police to tell what happened. So yeah, I mean, it took a long time. I don't know why, but yeah, he was an important person. I guess I do know why. I mean, a lot of people killed in those days. Their killers weren't brought to justice. Civil rights leaders. I mean, Medgar Evers, I think his killers were acquitted.
Right. The same thing with Malcolm and them. There's a bunch of convolution where you really, it's almost conspiracy type thing, and I don't know. It's some kind of way it always be pointing at the government at the end of the day.
Well, you know that the murder weapon that killed Leon Jordan was found in the police car. It was found being used like 30-something years later in a police car. So, I mean, there's another conspiracy just out there. Because like I said, the case isn't, they believe they know the killers,
but it's not ironclad, right?
No one has ever been convicted. So there are still people out there who aren't going to believe what my documentary says, who the killers are. Even in the documentary, there's people who question, what
actually took place. Yeah. So, in any of your parting words, what would you have to say to our community about your film, and let them know, again, reiterate when it's coming out, where it's going to be showed, where it can be seen?
Okay, well, the documentary is called Legacy of Leadership. It's about Leon Jordan, and it will be airing July 15th, and that is the 50th anniversary of his murder. July 15th, next Wednesday, at 8 p.m. It will air live on KSHB.com, KSHB Facebook, KSHB YouTube, and you'll be able to watch it there until September. But on July 15th, there will be live questions. I'll be answering live questions before and after the documentary premieres. 8 p.m. July 15th on KSHB.com or KSHB Facebook.
Will they allow you to share? Do you know?
After I signed the agreement, so after September, it will.
All right.
It'll be
because we will share it on Cascade Media Group's What's Up Worldwide, because he did have this connection to Liberia, and we would want to let our brethren over in Liberia know that they can watch this documentary about someone, because think he started the police force over there, or something with the firemen. And
Well, actually, I think
all right.
Lloyd Daniels' father
Was with the fire.
started the fire department in Kansas City. That's another documentary. I mean, that's another story.
Yeah, I'm saying Kansas City has so much history, but it has to be uncovered, and it really needs to be uncovered by people that look like those people. And as I said to you, a lot of people be like, that Nelson, he's just be a sourpuss. But I'm more like, those type of stories, it costs money to bring that to light. You know, people loved Malcolm X with Spike Lee. That didn't happen by osmosis. And most of the pictures that he's had to make, the major studios are not going to give you the money to make.
Right.
And this is for our community. You can't sit down at the table, don't buy any groceries, dictate what the meal is going to be and what time it's going to be served. And so when you want to see things about your community that can enhance your kids and your own self-esteem, you've got to be willing to cough it up. You've got to be willing to support it, not only with your words, because I tell people all the time, I see your lips moving, but I'm looking at your actions. So, in closing, as I always say, when you invest in your community, you're really just investing in yourself. Good night.